This is a Lee Precision Load Fast Shotshell press. It's an 8-station progressive press with auto index. I did a live stream with this press, I guess it says 9 months ago. I've got 240 views and a few comments, and one of the comments was from Ray Solis. And Ray wrote, "Hi, I just got it, and I'm missing the bushing for rotating along with the parts that go below the sizing plate. I could duplicate the parts if I knew what they look like. If it is not too much to ask, do you have any pics of when you took it apart for cleaning? Thanks in advance, Ray." Well, I figured that the best way to help Ray would be to get the press out and try to take a look at the parts that he has some questions about. I like the Load Fast. It's a little fussy. It's not a Mech 650. It's not a grabber. It's certainly not a 9000. But it does load a very nice shell. It has a nice pre-crimp station and a nice final crimp station that puts a good taper on shells, and they, you know, I've loaded a few hundred on it and I like it. It uses the same bushings as the Lee Load-All, so that's a handy feature. I have this set up for, I believe I have it set up for 1 ounce trap loads, if I remember correctly. Let me look at the bushing. Yep, it's a number 1 bushing, so that's 1 ounce. So it's and I was running 1 ounce in IMR red and Claybuster AA clone wads. Another thing that Ray asked about is he had picked up in my previous live stream that I had modified something on the press, and the only thing I've modified is this wad seater that runs down through the wad guide. Normally it's just a threaded rod, and it's a very small diameter. I don't know if we can see it. I'm using a handheld camera here so we can try to get a look. If you look up in there, you can see the smaller diameter on the inside. That's the original wad seating stem. I turned this aluminum piece to go on the outside that's just barely fits inside of a 12 gauge wad. It's threaded up here at the top to thread over the top of the existing seating stem that's there. Lee still has the instructions for this press on their website. It's in their discontinued products section way down at the bottom of the page. And the last page of it is a parts list. So they don't have a diagram with numbers that show what piece is called what, so you have to kind of explore for yourself and figure it out. Now the one thing that is kind of handy is it says parts are listed starting at the top of the press. So grip, well, yeah, looks like the grip's at the top of the press, so that's accurate. And then the shell post nut is the very lowest piece, so I guess that's way down on the bottom. So this press is a little different in that when you activate the handle, the whole bottom or the base, we'll have to look on the parts list and see what that's called. This big reinforced nylon part, let's see what they call that. They call that a, let's see, there's the shell plate, the hold down bolts, detent ball, detent spring, primer can base. I think the base is this aluminum part down here. Base clamp bolt, stop bolt, primer guide spring, base, kicker plug, primer indexer, cover indexer, detent spring, shell plate carrier. Okay, so they call that a shell plate carrier. That would make sense. So when you activate the handle, the linkage pulls the shell plate carrier up, indexes the shell plate, does its operation, comes back down and resets for the next station. So this press is interesting because things happen on the downstroke and things happen on the upstroke. So there's a lot going on when you get this full of 8 shells. If you go back and look at my live stream where I was running it, you'll see. So by Ray's questions, I'm assuming that where he's struggling is he probably doesn't have this plastic part right here. And I'm hoping there's enough light. I'll shine a little more in there just in case. That plastic part right there, which is the indexer, this piece right here is called the indexer cover. And from what I've read, where these presses struggled is this plastic indexer would get distorted or break. And if you look at how it works, we'll go over it here in a second, it's pretty obvious that if the press were to jam up, you could have a problem. So if I lift the indexer cover up, you can see that there's basically a plastic key, and there's 2 of them. There's one on the front and there's one on the back, this plastic key that it engages with the notches in the shell plate to index it. So let me set the camera here. I've got it on a little portable tripod. I'll see if I can set the camera up in a way that you can see that running. Bend this down a little bit. Okay, so now we're looking down. Here's the shell plate. Here's the indexer. Here's the indexer cover. Right here, let me get a pointer. Might help a little bit. I'll use this for a pointer. Right here you can see that there's a indexing pin that's in the post right there, and that rides in a groove in this indexer, and when this goes down in there it's angled so that it rotates the indexer when the press moves. So take a look at that when it comes up. You see that that plastic indexer starts to rotate, and then it engages the shell plate, finishes the stroke. When you come down, it's no longer engaged and it turns backwards. So it's like a clutch, very similar to any of the other auto-indexing lead presses. And if you look very close, you can see that the base of that lug is at an angle. So when it's traveling in the direction towards me, it's ramped and does not engage the shell plate. When it turns the other direction, that little leading edge catches in that part of the shell plate there to let it index. So that's how it all works. This is just a cover. It doesn't do anything. So to get a better look at this, I think we can slip it apart. And if we look on the parts list to make sure I'm calling these things the right name, the plastic part here is indeed called the indexer. The shiny disc here, this is the indexer cover. And then this is, of course, the shell plate. And the shell plate actually sizes the brass base on the shot shells, so that they come in from the bottom. That's another interesting thing, and if you watch the live video you'll see where you set the shell here, it comes down over it and pushes it up through the hole and sizes it. So let's real quick slip this apart, and then you can see what happens in here. And I'll start by just lifting the shell plate because that's pretty easy. There's two large Phillips screws here, and I believe they call those hold down bolts. So you turn this out with a big screwdriver. And I'm filming this kind of like a live stream, so you get all the errors, you get all of the sniffles and everything else. So now if I lift the cover, I can hold this up out of the way a little bit. I can lift the shell plate. Okay, and I'll get that up out of the way. And when you get down in there, you can see that what there is over here for the indexing is there's a ball, and there's a spring under that ball. And they call that the detent ball, and then beneath the detent ball is a detent spring underneath there. So I hope you can see down in there and see that spring in that hole. So that's how it indexes and makes sure things are lined up. The detent ball goes in each of these holes. Now below that, there really isn't much other than the primer stem, this primer hole plug, and a few other parts that I think probably Ray's problem is actually that he's missing or has a broken or damaged indexer, which is this plastic piece right here. Okay, so, and then, like I said earlier, there's that dowel pin down there. Can you see that? Let me get some light down there. Maybe you can see a little better. There's a pin there. Yeah, you can see it there. I got it illuminated. That pin rides in a groove inside of this indexer to make it rotate, or cam if you will. And it only rotates 1/8 of a circle at a time because it's an 8-station press. So if you can envision inside of this plastic indexer, there's a, I'll drop that back down, you can see it. You can see how it acts when it goes over it. There's a pin there. When it goes up and down over that pin, it rotates that little bit to make the shell plate index. And once again, I'll get some light on there so maybe you can see a little better. Might be able to set the light up here somehow. There we go. Well, it's in the way. There we go. That might get a little bit of light. So this indexer, when the carrier comes up, it rides on that pin and it turns 1/8 of a turn that way to index the plate, and when it comes down it goes back. And the way it clutches is by this angle on the bottom of that lug. And I think what happens with these when they get damaged is the leading edge of this lug right here that engages the shell plate gets worn, and I think also sometimes the whole plastic piece distorts. So let's try to take this part apart a little further to get a little bit better look. Once again, I'm going to go back to the handheld camera here. So excuse my wobble while I do things one-handed, but the handle can come off pretty easily with these bolts right here. So I'll just twist these out. It's a shoulder bolt. Dirty like everything else. So we'll go over to this side, and I apologize for the camera work. I have this GoPro mounted on a handle selfie stick type thing. Well, that was weird. When I said GoPro, something popped up in the screen. That was weird. But anyway, so I am still recording, so that's good. So now this handle is now loose from there, and I can just let that kind of fold down. Then the next thing I can do is I can detach this post from the base, and that's a pretty simple job. If we go down here in the bottom, there's just a single cinch screw down there. Once again, I don't think you can see, it needs light, so let's shine a little light. See the cinch screw down there? That cinch screw is all that holds the post into the base. So let's see if I can, with my left hand. It's always fun to do things on video when you're on your own and you don't want to. I can set up shots and cameras and things and make this all real fancy, but boy, it takes a lot of time. So now I've got that loose. So if I remember correctly, I can grab the top up here, which I don't remember what they call that casting. Let's see what they call that if I can look it up. Hopper valve, tool carrier with column. So I think I can pull the tool carrier and the column up and out of the base, and then since I disconnected the handle here, I should be able to slide things apart. So let's set the camera up a little differently here, and hopefully everybody can see a little bit what I'm doing. There, that's a good enough view, I think. Alright, so I released the clamp on the bottom, so I think if I remember right, that'll come right up out of there. Did I loosen it enough? I think I did. I might have to open grab another tool here. You always need more tools. Spread that open just a little bit there, and I think that this whole thing will come out. I'm going to take the plastic bin off the top so I don't drop that and break it. But I think, oh, there it goes. It's starting to come up. It's a little bit tight, but it's starting to come up. There we go. So now we've got the base off, and because I unhooked these handles, all I'm catching on, I didn't really need to even unhook the handles to get it this far. I forgot that you have to unhook these sensors if you want to take the whole base off. But what I can do now is I can get this in front of the camera where you can see what it's doing. And it comes down, and I'll get the light again here. See if I can illuminate this a little bit. There's that pin that I mentioned right there that the indexer rides on, is this pin right here. And it goes inside of the indexer up through, there's a small slot for it there in the bottom of the base that you can see where it goes up into the base. See right above the pin there's that rectangular, that's a keyway if you will in the carrier that allows it to pass over that pin. So let's go after this a little further. I'll set it back on the base just temporarily. And I put it on there. I put it on there 180 out. That was interesting. Let's spin that around. Don't knock the camera over. There we go. And I'm trying to remember the best way to get those indexers off of there, or the case sensors off of there. But once again, here's the indexer, and it rides over that pin. So I'm going to take the detent ball out so that it doesn't fall. And there's the spring, the detent ball. There's the camera over there, the detent ball and the spring. Take those out, and I'll just set those over here on the bench, get them out of the way. So to get the indexer off, the next thing I'll have to do is I'll have to release these case sensors, and those are a simple big long screw. You can take these apart at the top. You can slip the little keys off of them. There's a variety of ways to do this, but I think that this will be the less hassle is to take this off this way. So I don't know if you can see here. Let me get if I can get the camera over here. There's what I'm taking out, is this case sensor screw. It's a big long screw. It looks like it might be a 1032 or so. I'm not sure what the diameter is, but it's a big long screw that screws into the shell plate carrier down there in that hole, and then catches the case sensor to actuate on this side the powder bar. And then it has the same mechanism over here on this side that does the shot. So I'll spin this one out. I'm doing this one-handed again because I'm trying to film it, and I'm trying to be expeditious or expeditious, however you say that word, so that I'm not providing a whole bunch of dull camera work here. So there we go. Now we should be able to pull this whole top part off again and leave. And once again, I'm doing this one-handed. There we go. So there, the top is off. There's what we have. The top, we'll just lay that down up here out of the way. And now, if we look down here, I can take the shell plate off. The indexer cover already fell off, so it's back here. And then here's the indexer. And this is probably the part that Ray has the problem with, I would guess. Let's try to get some light inside of it, and you can see, hopefully, that slot in there. It's not really. It's like a slanted keyway that makes this rotate 1/8 of a turn. You can see it against the white paper there, the groove in it. Let me get the. I'll try to hold the light up here in a way with the camera so that I can illuminate in there. This is kind of an interesting test in dexterity to see if I can get the camera lined up. There you go. You can see that angle in this indexer. And you can see on mine there's a little bit of distortion in the plastic right there. And then, like I was saying before, the way this clutches is this angle on the, there's this spline, if you will, on here, or key, and the bottom of that is angled so that when it rotates this way, it cams over the top of the shell plate. When it rotates the other way, it engages the shell plate. You might be able to demonstrate that a little bit here. So that the indexer sits under the shell plate like that. So because that bottom key is angled, when it rotates this way, watch, it'll engage. See, it engages, but when it goes this way, because it's ramped, it just ratchets over. So for each cycle of the press, it goes this way, engages it and ratchets it, then when it comes down, it re-indexes and comes back to do it again. So I think where these presses usually struggled is probably this indexer, and that keyway in particular, these leading edges of this slanted clutch part of the, I guess we would call that a spline or a key or a lug. You can see those are distorted just a little bit. I don't think this part's been available for a long time from Lee. The other thing is it's got this pin on the bottom. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, there it is. There's that pin. That engages this area here to make this, only rotate. So you can see here when it's indexed there, it's lined up so that the whole carrier can, if you can, trying to get a good shot down in there. When this thing is on the shaft, the pin comes up that straight keyway. This pin right here has everything lined up so that then that slanted groove, slanted keyway in the indexer would ride on the pin, and as it came up, it would give you your 1/8 of a turn index backwards. And then when the carrier went back up, it would turn this way until it lined up, and everything just drops through. So that's what's beneath the shell plate carrier, or excuse me, beneath the shell plate. Beneath the shell plate you have the index spring, or detent spring, the detent ball, and then the shell plate sets over the top of the indexer like this, and then the indexer cover goes over the top of it like that. Now what else is down here? This is the primer seating stem. I don't know what they call it. I'm going to use generic names. This is where the new shell comes in. When the press is up, when the shell plate carrier is up, the new shell sets here and gets inserted in. And then the rest of this is just the molded plastic. There's a plug in this primer port right here, and I think they call this thing here a primer kicker. And it looks like I have a little bit of a spider web in there too, but that's not a factory part. That's aftermarket. But they call this there's the primer post. The primer spring, I believe, is underneath that, down on the bottom. Then you have this kicker plug, they call that, and then this is the primer kicker. Now, I don't have a primer feed for this load fast. I'd really like to have one because from what I can tell, the load fast primer feed might be one of the most rare Lee Precision products that's out there. And boy, one came up on an auction on eBay, and it was very inexpensive. It was like around $20, and somehow I missed the notification when it was time to bid on it, and it went at the starting bid for like $19.99 or something, and I was very upset with myself for missing that auction. So if anyone's out and about and finds a primer feed for a Lee Load Fast, I'd really like to have one. It's different than the primer feed for the Load All, totally different setup. So if you happen to see one, let me know. But Ray, I hope that this is helpful. If there's anything else about this press that you have questions about, I'd be happy to go over them. Once again, that pin that's pressed in the column, you can see the diagonal wear marks around it from when that indexer rides past it. That indexer, let's real quick slip that on there. I'm going to set the light down. I think I can do without that. But if we take the indexer itself, probably even use the tripod here on this selfie stick. Let's do that. There we go. So this would go on the column like so. So you can see that there's the groove, and when it slides over the pin, there's your turn. When it comes back down, there it goes the other way. So that's how that works. So if that groove is worn out, or this piece is broken, or, like I think happens a lot, if this slanted part of this key that drives, there's two, one on the front, one on the back, this can get distorted and the plastic mangled. So I did read somewhere on the internet when I was first investigating Lee Load Fast presses that someone was thinking about trying to duplicate this, and I believe they may have been trying to duplicate it in aluminum or something. I don't think I would recommend that. I think that, like a lot of Lee presses, people get upset about this plastic stuff wearing. I think that the plastic stuff is a sacrificial part. This is a clutch. It's designed to fail if you jam things up in the bottom of this press. You would much rather fail this, other than the fact that it's not available anymore, but if it were available, this is a sacrificial part, like the little square key on a Lee Classic turret press, or the little white ratcheting parts in a Pro 1000, or the auto indexing older turret presses. So this could be a part that could maybe be drawn up in 3D software and 3D printed. I do have a 3D printer, and I do have a good part. It wouldn't be a terrible part. It's a cylinder with a flange and some flats and a spiral keyway. I've been trying to use Fusion 360, I think it's called, and I don't really do well with the interface of it, so it would be a struggle for me to draw this. I may be able to do it in older software that I'm more familiar with, like I'm a Vectorworks user from way back, which it was originally MiniCAD, and then it evolved into Vectorworks. I do have a version of Vectorworks from the past, on a machine from the past, that I've kept around for old drawings that I did a long time ago, so that I could still use them and edit them and support things that are out there. But I might be able to draw it in that and then slice it and try to print one. I'm not sure if I'm motivated enough to do that. But I would certainly work with someone that might want to make them. You can see that is a little, it might be an optical illusion. It's hard to tell with that. This gets a lot of things going on with your eyes because it's got all these little parts, but it appears like it's a little bit egg-shaped. Like the diameter is larger from key to key than across this way. but that may be an optical illusion from having this slotted keyway in there. It may be distorted a little bit, I'm not sure, but if I put it on the round, yeah, it certainly is. There is more there. I'm showing this, I'm talking and not showing. If I put it this way, I can see there's less clearance in this diameter than there is in this diameter, so it is distorted a little bit. I don't know if that's a function of operating it or if that's a function of expansion, or in the plastic itself when it's molded. I've not asked Lee personally if they have these, but from what I've read online, I gather that they don't. So this video went over 20 minutes. Somewhere around the 20-minute mark, there's probably a break. I'll do the best I can to edit it together, and hopefully it didn't do something real silly. But anyway, hopefully this is helpful to Ray and to anyone else that has fooled around with a load fast. I like the machine. It is quite complex with these case sensors and springs and bell cranks and stuff to but the cool thing is it doesn't throw powder and it doesn't throw shot unless there is a shell underneath the software. Just did another thing too. It didn't like a word that I said. It's really wild. I think the GoPro software censors you or something, or has keywords. I think I said shot and it didn't like it. It doesn't throw shot. It didn't. Oh, it did that. It said something. It said something tagged. Highlight tagged. So I'm seeing some sort of a keyword there that's flashing something on my software. I'll have to learn about that. Never a dull moment when you're making videos, but I hope it's helpful to Ray. I hope it's helpful to anyone else that's interested in the load fast. Talk about it in the comments. If there's things we want to look at further, I'm willing to do that. And for now, I'll see everyone later.